I see it as a phenomenal time for clarity and truth and a reassertion of true values, not fleeting values, but for each of us to anchor within ourselves and ask, what do I value? What's important in my life? And where do I spend my time?
Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. In a world that's constantly racing, we believe the most powerful way to move forward is to slow down, listen, and move with intention. And how we do this is by taking the time to pause and appreciate the journey. I'm your host, Kendra Chapman, mom of triplets, former school principal, and someone who has embraced the rhythm of country living. Each week, we delve into the balance between mind, body, and spirit, and figuring out the way or ways to align our life with what truly matters. So whether you are tuning in for the first time or you have been a long-time listener, thank you for being here. Today's guest is Dr. Eleanor Haspel Portner. She's a pioneer in scientific spirituality with more than 50 years experience, helping people better understand themselves and their life path. With a PhD from the University of Chicago and a legacy of best-selling books and also transformative work, Dr. Eleanor has guided over 45,000 individuals towards greater clarity, confidence, and meaningful change. In our conversation, we explore her unique approach to blending science and spirituality, her noble energy map, which is a system to better understand how your energy can unlock your highest potential. This is a powerful conversation about alignment, purpose, and what it really means to live the life that you love. Let's get into it. Dr. Eleanor, thank you for coming on the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast.
I am happy to be here.
I'm excited to get into your work. But before we get into that conversation, can you just share with us a little bit about what you do these days to go slow to go fast?
I take my time in knowing what's right for me. In fact, I was just having a conversation with my husband about that, weighing when do I know what I know is the right next step in my work, in my life, even in when I buy things. I take it into all four areas of consciousness: the mental waking world, the spiritual archetypal world, the emotional angelic world, and the physical. We need to be aligned. So I know what I want to accomplish, but then I wait. And then when it moves fast.
So when you say that you know what you want, like you set your intention, you've got your goal, whatever that is, and then you go through the four different worlds that you mentioned just now, and then you wait. Is that a process where you journal, where you meditate, where you do something different, where you do all of those things?
All of the above.
It's nice to get into the mind of my guest before we get into the conversation, because it's good to see where your practices start every day.
I start my day with praying, reading the Bible, meditating, and breathing. And then I have a leisurely breakfast. And then I take time to get dressed. So I always allow myself 2 to 3 hours in the morning for personal self-care before I get into the outside world.
I love that you take your time and you just start your day that way. And, there might be people here watching and listening who may not be able to do that every day. But if you could do that at least on the weekend or once a week.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought transcendental meditation to the world, and I have been a transcendental meditator since 1974. And he said, if you're too busy to meditate, you're too busy. So regardless of your job, taking 20 minutes in the morning to be with yourself. No one is too busy for that.
I agree. It takes some self-discipline. You might have to get up a little bit earlier, but you set that time aside and notice how you feel. And I tell myself that when I start to get worked up, I realize I haven't been making that a priority.
Inner landscape and the inner self is so critical for being in your soul. And if you're not in your soul, you're not in yourself.
There is so much that I want to get into with you today. But first, I do want to just share with listeners and viewers out there that Dr. Eleanor did a reading with me before this interview. She wanted to show me how she charts a client and works out their birth chart. And I want to let you get into more of that technical description of what that looks like and what's all involved. But there was a very interesting process that led into that, and then also came out of that when Dr. Eleanor met with me and walked through everything with me. It's very insightful, and I'm sure we're going to come back full circle and talk more about that through our conversation. But first, how you study all of the pieces that you do to make this happen for a client. Can you walk us through a little bit of that background of the different modalities before we get into how you do work with your clients?
Well, the modality started for me very young. When I was a child, I was psychic and I could see auras. And I realized really young that what I was seeing, nobody else could understand. So for whatever reason, I didn't stop seeing, but I stopped talking about it. But I knew after I read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and Memories, Dreams, and Reflections by Carl Jung that I wanted to have a PhD so that the esoteric world I lived in could be credible. And so I chose to go to the University of Chicago to the first interdisciplinary social science program in the world. And it integrated sociology, psychology, biology, and anthropology. The four worlds. I didn't know it was the four worlds. So I studied, I was very academic. I taught college for 3 years while I was in graduate school. I had my children. And I realized when my children were 2 and 3, and I was already a developmental psychologist, and I had studied with some of the greats, I didn't know what to do when they had a tantrum. And I decided I needed to learn because it was very important to me that I not squash their own being. Clinically, I was seeing that all of my patients in psychology came to me because nobody listened to their soul. And that the hurt was that they didn't feel seen or heard or understood. And so I studied parent effectiveness training. And Tom Gordon had come out of the same department I did. And it was a very mental world. Here's what you do. Here's what you see. Here's how to decipher the communication. Well, it was great for organizational training, for parenting skills in the moment. But I was also working with couples as a clinical psychologist. And those kinds of skills were not getting to the core of the miscommunication between the couples. So I studied further. I learned to be a hypnosis expert. I was president of the Clinical Hypnosis Society for 2 years. I studied Masters and Johnson sex therapy and imago therapy and Gottman therapy. And what really touched the soul of people was clean language, a tool where there's no visual, auditory, or kinesthetic cues. Questions like, and given this, what do you know about it? Or when X, that's like what? And the quickest way to stop an argument, not that any of you listeners ever get into arguments, but if you ever are in a disagreement, just turn to the other person, look them in the eye, and say, given all of this, what would you like to have happen now? You've turned it completely back on them, and there's no argument. So I gathered all these skills, and along the way, I became an astrologer. and I studied the Kabbalistic tree of life and lots of other things. But when I found the human design system and saw the mandala that integrated the tree of life with chakras, astrology, hexagrams of the I Ching, I was fascinated and I studied it. And the messenger of it, Ra Uru Hu, asked my husband and me if we would be willing to validate it scientifically. So Marvin said yes. I said no. And I'm the social scientist. So it fell to me to do all the statistics. And what I found was that human design was an incomplete, disempowering system because it was formulaic the way Ra was teaching it. And a lot of what he said from a content level didn't hold up scientifically. But what did hold up were the four worlds and the Kabbalistic tree of life and type and the body map. So using my astrological experience, I expanded the system to be developmental. So it traces the first 3 months of a person's life. And instead of being like astrology, which freezes everyone in one moment in time, it expands it to a 6-month period of time where all of the cosmic energies are imprinted into the aura. And after reading thousands of noble energy maps, God told me to go public. And here I am.
It's just fascinating that you kept wanting to learn and learn and learn. You kept asking, you kept seeking. And I'm wondering if you're continuing to do that. You're still
I am.
adding to your practice. Yeah.
I
So I
am.
think you're the epitome of a lifelong learner. You're always going to be adding
Yes.
information into this formula. I haven't, I'm 50, so I'm in midlife. I've studied some astrologers, of been out on the social networks, for a bit of my life, since it's been around. And I haven't seen anybody do what you do, blending all of these modalities together, all the worlds, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
I've understood them separately in some fashion, either at a surface level or gone a little deeper. But to put them, it's like you've taken those teachings and you've layered them over each other and then held them up for your clients to understand a full
Right.
picture. And it's been really helpful for me, and I'm sure many others who have worked with you. So how did you come to understand? You said you heard from God that you needed to go public with this. You came up with, some statistics around how this is plausible. What happened next?
Well, it was a long process. I studied human design in 1996. I asked Marvin and me to validate it in 1999. I broke with Ra in 2003 for several reasons. The primary being he had no interest in the science. And he wanted me to fudge data. And having been in academia in graduate school, I moved away from it because they fudged data, and I couldn't do that. So I've been doing my charts since 2000. I had the statistics, but I was living in California. I was studying the Kabbalistic tree of life. I was president of the Hypnosis Society. I was writing my first books on astrology and my charts. And nothing I did was completely visible. I did calendars, I did reports, I did all kinds of readings, and I did it in my circle, and I did some groups, and I had a busy practice. But at the same time, I was collecting data. I was collecting data on doing charts of every patient I had and seeing what it could tell them and what it couldn't tell them. And studying clean language and imagotherapy and other skills that I felt from a clinical standpoint needed to be used to tap the depth of what my clients needed. Then in 2022, after studying Tai Chi again, I was standing at my husband's bedside after he had heart surgery. And I was doing figure eights and a prayer. And the voice said to me, your charts are the figure eights. You know what they are. You know what you have. Go public. So then when I went public, I told my Tai Chi group, God told me to do this. 15 people signed up for readings.
Mm.
And things started emerging and I got pushed. I was happy to be not working as much, and we had just moved from California to South Carolina. I was remodeling our house, When God speaks to me, I do it. Met Marvin in India because a voice told me to go to India, to an ashram. I had no interest in the ashram. I had to rearrange my clinical practice and arrange for my kids, and I went to India. And I actually met Marvin, who had left his medical practice to go to India, and we lived within a mile of each other in the Palisades in California. So when God speaks to me, I listen.
Wow. So you met your husband in India.
In India. At the day and time, my mentor astrologer, Catherine, New Jersey, told me I would meet somebody who would be a long-term person in my life. We've been married now going on 49 years.
Wow. There are people out there listening and watching right now who have probably heard whispers, but didn't follow the guidance. And this is life experience. If you follow what you're hearing through awareness.
Let me say it again. Every client I've ever had clinically, and I've been in practice for over 50 years, everyone who came to see me came because nobody listened to their soul.
Mm.
And the healing in everyone is to honor who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I say, when you know what you know, and no one can tell you you don't know, you're not selfish, you're not stubborn, you are aligned. When I first heard that, it came to me from a dream, and it was about knowing with a K. And the line was, you have to know with a K. And I took it, and in all my writing, if you see the line, it always has a bolded K. Because when you know because you know, there is no one who can argue with you. Now, if they do and you compromise, you pay for it. So all of my work is geared toward empowering people to live from their soul. The name of one of my last books was Living from Soul. And my next book is going to be Parenting from Soul.
And I love that. As a parent and educator, we definitely need more resources for parents. So, Dr. Eleanor, can you dig deeper into where you said it? Anybody who's feeling like they're not being heard, their soul is telling them something, and maybe their decisions aren't lining up with that. How would you explain energy patterns and how they reveal our hidden decision-making barriers?
Well, a lot of people are energy sensitive. They pick up on what other people feel, and you can't make a decision for yourself if somebody else is influencing you or pulling you in a certain direction. So much current parenting and psychology does not take into, I'm looking away because the dog just came into the room. Hold on a minute. Settle down. He can stay if he settles down. So many people never knew or had honored what their soul was telling them. And so, when we start with kids in toddlerhood and we say no when they want to explore, we're beginning the process of socialization. I do not call it conditioning, because conditioning means you no longer think about what you're doing. But if we bring children up to not be conditioned, to be socialized, they do what is common in the culture because it's the mental world and we know we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't detract from them living from who they really are. And we have to begin to bring that back into the schoolroom, the family, the business world. where people love what they do what they love, and they do it the way they love doing it.
Right. I mean, I think that is one of the secrets to, I don't know why it's a secret, but it's a secret right now to living the life that you want is, yeah, that.
Well, so many people are not doing what they love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've only had my teaching jobs, which I didn't love, but I didn't love school. But it was a ticket to something else. And I knew I didn't love it. And I admitted to myself I didn't love it. And I admitted to myself that I was doing it for a purpose
Mm-hmm.
and that purpose was important enough for me to put my soul in observation mode. I didn't delude myself into thinking I would be happy as a professor, for example. I
Mm-hmm.
did it for a year and I knew this is never going to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it informed what I did want to do because I realized that I couldn't be happy intellectually. I needed to help people from caring, loving place and be of service. And so I didn't think being a professor was being of service to humanity,
Mm-hmm.
but I did it to know if I wanted to do it. So be honest with yourself is one of the biggest elements of spirituality.
Right.
And I think maybe, and I haven't thought about it this way before, but I'm thinking about it now, so I'm going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I think if parents told their children that even if they didn't love doing something, they needed to do it to comply, but not to close off how they felt about it,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we would empower the soul more than we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that little bit of permission
Mm-hmm.
that parents leave out of it.
Yeah. It's that acknowledgement we need to acknowledge, but also share why they need
Exactly.
to do X.
I had a lunch with a couple, and the baby was, I want to say, 14 months old or so.
Mm-hmm.
So she and I locked eyes immediately. We loved each other. And I was sitting across the table next to her father, and the mother was across. And periodically, the baby and I would lock eyes, and I'd look at her aura. And at one point, I said to the parents, "Have you seen her aura?" And they looked at me like I was crazy. And then the mother said to me, the only time she ever gets really upset is when I put her in her car seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and then what happens? Well, I tell her, "I'm really sorry I have to do this." So I said, "Do you ever say to her, I recognize that you're really uncomfortable because you may feel trapped,
Mm-hmm.
but it's part of what we have to do to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're uncomfortable and I feel your discomfort, but
Yeah.
maybe just while we're in the car, you can be okay with it."
Mm-hmm.
And so the mother said, "No." And I said, "It really helps when you acknowledge what the underlying resistance is, even if the child has to comply."
Yes. Yes.
And she did it. And she said it made a world of difference.
Because that little soul wants to be heard and acknowledged, like you said. So if we get to like 30 or much older and we're still not being heard, then we're going to have some issues.
And we're going to expect never to be heard.
Right.
And then we're going to accuse people of not listening to us,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know how to speak in a way that gets us right. And that's where the four worlds come in, is that each world has its own communication style. So our body, for example, gives us messages that we
Mm-hmm.
often don't pay attention to.
True.
And then we wonder why we get burnt out or are exhausted or can't sleep at night. So listening to what your body tells you and what you need is the physical biological world. So the charts I do look at each world, how a person is defined and designed in each world, and how they come together as an integrated whole. And from that, I can see how you process information in your mind, how your gut, the sacral center, tells you what's right for you. and what the timing is, whether you can easily manifest in the world, how you pick up energy from other people. I just did a reading for someone, and she's a channel. She channels information, and her challenge is staying aligned to herself because she has a strong inner core. But if she takes care of other people and their emotions before she tunes into herself, she'll burn out.
So these noble energy maps that you just shared, this is the work that you do for your clients, and you chart out everything, and it's based on their birthday, the time of birth, where they were born. And you also look at 3 months before they were born and 3 months after they were born. So you
Exactly.
have that whole spectrum.
And sometimes in between.
Mm.
And the times came out of my astrological training. But when I was looking to see how to differentiate twins and twin kittens who I had the birth times on, and I saw my 8 charts, I went, holy, this explains it. Because it explained me, it explained my husband, it explained my children, it explained clients. And I'm looking at these going, oh my God, it explains this. It explains that, explains this person and this person. And I knew it. It's like I knew intuitively about them. But now in a colored chart, I got the confirmation.
So this is like literally, I mean, you call it noble energy maps, but it is literally a map that can help you explain to a given client, what decisions they need to be thinking about when, how they think through things, what challenges they may be having because of.
For example, if a child picks up energy, like my husband is a physical empath, his first memory is of touching somebody's knee and feeling the pain in his knee. How wonderful if he had been told as a child, you're energy sensitive, and when you're around people, you may feel what they feel. And it's not you.
Yeah, it would have helped him.
The noble energy maps are one of the best psychological instruments I've ever seen, and I've used them all.
So do you find that you are drawn into working with your clients in a psychological modality more so than other areas, or do you see them all kind of come together?
I work at all levels. I mean, I have some people who are very psychic
Hmm.
and who need help containing it. I have other clients who are high executives who life is a little bit out of balance, and they don't always know how to focus on their inner self. I have some clients who abuse their bodies by working out too much or not eating or drinking too much alcohol. So I work with a mixture of a coaching modality, even if I'm just reading a chart, reading it in terms of all my training. So I go wherever my clients need me to go. And I have the background to be clinical or coaching or business consulting, or I can do it all.
And I love that you created this tool based on statistical, learnings. It's not just you came up with it based on astrology and then thought you would add in a couple of things. I mean, you were very methodical about what you did. And now you're helping probably thousands of clients approach their life in a better way because they understand what they need to tweak and where they need to focus. So you're an academic and also a spiritual person, and you read the Bible every day. So are you seeing this integration in spiritual practices enhancing any daily, I guess, resilience for your clients?
My clients, yes. We are living at a biblical time. The aspects astrologically have not occurred since 306 BC. I did a lecture on that June 6th, I think. It's on YouTube. There is so much Aquarian energy. And so it's the aspects are so strong. And now with 3i Atlas, which we don't know if it's a comet, we don't know if it's an extraterrestrial craft. But what we do know is that the activity on the sun is unprecedented and that everyone is being impacted pretty strongly. And I see it as a phenomenal time for clarity and truth and a reassertion of true values, not fleeting values, but for each of us to anchor within ourselves and ask, what do I value? What's important in my life? And where do I spend my time? So many people are caught up in the mental waking political spectrum that they're forgetting that their happiness and their self-actualization does not come from outside, from opinion. It comes from truth within. And interestingly enough, if we look at the tree of life, at the bottom of the tree of life, under the central self-center, is the cross of Christ. And the cross is showing us that we incarnate into a body. But the tasks we have to complete are between balancing the solar plexus, the emotions, with intuition and consciousness. And until we can transform emotional reactivity into compassion and love, we cannot consider that we are conscious. We're a work in progress, but we're not there yet.
And this totally aligns with research I was just doing this morning, where I was looking at the chakras and learning about the first three, how there really are our physical self, our ego, or all the things that we know of ourself. And that's that red, that orange, and the yellow. But then when you need to bridge from, and this is just one piece I was reading, you need to bridge from the third chakra to the fourth chakra to go into your heart and become more that
Yeah,
spiritual
but you see, the
being.
tree of life is a little bit more specific.
Okay.
And in the tree of life, there are 32 paths of intelligence. When we start with the 32nd path and we incarnate into 4 worlds. And the tree of life says that. And the task of being in a body is to realize that we're a spiritual being and that we have intuition and we have a mission. We have to filter all of the challenges that come in through the emotional center, which is the other side, and we have to see them as lessons to learn. I always say, when I'm in a very challenging situation, like when I broke my clavicle by an ocean wave, and I said, okay, God, what is so important for me to learn that you would knock me over with my beloved ocean? What do I need to learn? And I got the answer. You're the president of the Hypnosis Society and you need to learn to delegate. You're carrying too much. You're shouldering too much responsibility with the words. I got the message. I said, okay, I got it. So when we learn to use our intuition, our higher self, our self-reflection, our journaling, our meditating, we then have the potential to turn emotional reactions into love and compassion. We have to first do it for ourselves. We have to get rid of the negative self-talk and do it. So when we do that, we then begin up the path of return. And that requires, it's the Tower card in Tarot, the Devil card, and the Death card. And the one that crosses it is Temperance. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of false beliefs about ourselves, about other people. We need to allow parts of ourselves that we no longer are or want to be to die so we can be reborn, renewed, reinvent ourselves. You did that.
I did. I'm going through that now. And I pulled the temperance card like last week.
Interesting.
Yes.
The Temperance card is the 25th path of return on the tree of life. And you have in the Temperance card a foot in 2 worlds, the solar world and the lunar world. And you see it right there in the card. And there's a disc on the angel's face, the third eye, the inner eye. I've been teaching the tree of life because the tree of life is actually the map of self-actualization. And it is what we call in psychology a Gutman scale. A Gutman scale, do you know what it is from teaching?
No.
It's a scale where if you don't pass through X developmental stage, you can't go to Y.
Oh,
So a lot of children, for example, have auditory sequencing issues. They can't hear multiple commands. And that is a 6-year developmental issue. Very
mm,
easy to fix. But if it's not diagnosed, they don't go
yeah.
past it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because I saw lots of kids who couldn't follow multi-step directions. Absolutely.
I grew up without depth perception and with auditory sequencing issues. And I didn't know it until I got my kids into vision training. And then I was sitting with a psychology friend of mine. And I said, I feel so stupid. I do an IQ test. And when I get to the digits forwards and backwards, I can't do them. And she said, "Oh, you have auditory sequencing issues. Come, I'll fix it in 2 sessions." I said, "What is it?" She said, "When you're 6, you have to begin to learn how to do this, but you have to visualize what it is you're remembering in order for it to be hooked up properly." And so the way she got me through it, we used a rotary phone, and she would repeat the number and I would dial it. So it was in the number, and she would tell me to visualize it. So I would visualize it and I would draw it and I would feel it. And then 2 sessions and I was cured.
Wow.
I never knew why I had to take notes of everything the teacher said.
Mm-hmm.
So these kinds of things are all part of developmental sequences, and some of them show up in the noble energy maps because of the way they come into the different worlds.
So does that mean that you're going to have strategies like that for parents in your new book coming up? Very good.
Yes.
I love that. Every educator and parent's going to want a copy of that.
Yeah. Well, my Living from Soul goes over all the different communication skills for each world, but it's more like a journaling book. So if you want to read it, you can go and read about each world and then assess. There's an assessment at the end that I put together for the 4 worlds. And you fill out where you are in each, and you can send it to me. And I do a short consult if you have any questions about the world.
Okay. Well, Dr. Eleanor, our hour is up.
My pleasure doing it. I'm glad to share the knowledge with as many people as I can.
Do you have any final thoughts before I let you go?
Well, I hope all the listeners ask themselves, am I loving what I do and doing what I love? And when I know what I know, and no one can tell me I don't know, I'm aligned. I'm not stubborn or selfish, and I don't need to argue. I just need to say, please, this is right for me. Honor it.
And I think if we can come to that understanding sooner than later, we're going to be a happier soul.
Yes. And we tell our kids the same thing.
I'm going to make sure all your contact information's in the show notes so people can figure out how to work with you offline if they want to know more.
My Living from Soul is already out. So, Kendra, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show of the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. If this conversation resonated with you, or if Dr. Eleanor's work really spoke to you, I hope that you'll take a moment and jot whatever thoughts you had come to your mind while you were listening down in your journal or on your calendar or planner so you don't forget. Because something is telling you this is your sign that you need to explore deeper and reflect on where your energy is flowing and where it might be asking for more attention and intention. Be sure to check out Dr. Eleanor's work with Noble Energy Wellness and to learn more of her Noble Energy Maps system on her website, and all that information will be in the show notes. If you found value in today's episode, I hope that you consider sharing it with somebody you know who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already so you never miss another release. Until next time, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast, and thanks for listening.